Hello, Year 6. This is going to be Chapter 6 of Pig Heart Boy by Malorie Blackman. This chapter is called Trudy. I looked out across the car park to the fields beyond. The fields looked like a patchwork quilt, sewn together using swatches of a host of different shades of green. Some fields were so light as to look yellow, whereas others were so dark they almost looked purple. It was beautiful. I shivered as the chill September wind tried to eat its way through my jacket, but I didn't really mind. The fields, the sky, the hedges, even the car park, they all spelt life and hope. We had had to change trains twice to get to Beaconsridge station, and if ever a place had looked like it was the middle of nowhere, then this was it. I wondered what people who lived in Beaconsridge did for fun. This is ridiculous. How much longer are we going to have to wait? I sighed inwardly as I looked over at Mum. For the last 4 days, ever since Dr. Bryce had come to see us, my Mum hadn't opened her mouth, except to snap or complain or do anything else similar. I knew that she was just upset about the whole situation, but to tell the truth, she was getting on my nerves. And from the look on Dad's face, I could see he felt exactly the same as me. He tried to parry every complaint with a joke or a smile, but now his smile was beginning to wear thin. We've only been waiting 15 minutes, he soothed. Dr. Bryce said he'd meet us off the train. The train left 20 minutes ago, Mum snapped again. I'm not going to stand out here in the freezing cold for much longer. Shall we stand inside the ticket office then? Dad suggested. That's just not the point. Maybe we should just get on the next train back home, Mum said. Kathy, for goodness sake. Mum, Dad, I think this might be him now, I pointed out at the first car I could see that was coming our way. I didn't want to listen to another argument. Not here, not now. For heaven's sake, I was nervous enough as it was. The car I pointed to drove by, but the van behind it pulled up into the station forecourt and drove up to us. Please let this be Dr. Bryce, please, I said, inside. The driver pulled up alongside and turned off the engine. She leaned across the empty passenger seat, wound down the window, but it wasn't Dr. Bryce. It was some woman I'd never seen before. She had dancing dark brown eyes framed by a serious, studious face. Her black hair was pulled into a ponytail. She wore a white overall. Cameron Kelsey? Yes, I nodded eagerly. Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey? Yes, Dad replied. Who else would we be? Mum muttered under her breath. Hi, I'm Janice Ehrlich. I'm Dr. Bryce's assistant. Sorry I'm late. That's all right, I said quickly. I didn't want Mum voicing another opinion about the doctor's punctuality. Dr. Ehrlich smiled. Well, hop in the back and we'll get going then. I walked towards her, followed by Mum and Dad. When I saw the inside of the MPV, I was amazed. Comfortable was not the word. It was sumptuous. 2 sets of black leather seats had been placed, facing each other with a small retractable central console in the middle of each one. Each console had been pushed down to display snacks and a couple of bottles of soft drinks. There was a glass panel between the driver's and front passenger seats and those in the back. All the glass was tinted, as were the other windows in the back. No one from the outside stood a chance of seeing inside at the MPV's passengers. A quick examination of the display panel in the roof of the car above each of the seats showed they could be used to set lighting, or maybe move them back, or talk to the driver, even play music. What a car! I wanted one. What's with the tinted windows? Dr. Bryce isn't taking any chances, is he? Mum sniffed. All the guests who come to our research centre have to travel in one of our company MPVs. It's a safety precaution. I hope you don't mind, Dr. Ehrlich said with a smile. Yes, I do actually, Mum sniffed. But I'll get in anyway. We all got into the back of the car, and Mum and I sat on one side with Dad sitting on the opposite. While we fastened our seatbelts, the door slid almost silently shut by itself. Is all this cloak and dagger stuff really necessary? Mum asked. Dad shrugged. They obviously think so, dear. The MPV started to move. I turned to look out of the windows. We pulled out of the station forecourt, then turned right. Due to the tinted glass, the sky, the buildings, even the odd person we saw along the way, had taken on a bit of a grey tinge. I reached up to press the button to switch the light on in my side of the car. I thought the light would help make the back of the MPV seem a bit less shadowy and sombre, but it didn't. The yellow light cast from overhead was pale and sickly. Mum and Dad and I sat uneasy silence for the car as it travelled on. This is ridiculous, Mum muttered. Anyone would think this was Mission Impossible or something. Dad and I tittered, and even Mum smiled for a bit, but it didn't last long. And still the car kept moving. Mum kept glancing down at her watch. I did the same. 40 minutes had passed. Mum then reached to press the button of the intercom again. How much longer before we get there? Mum said, irritation lending an edge to her voice. Not much longer now, Mrs. Kelsey, Dr. Ehrlich's cheerful voice rang out. Just another 2 kilometres and we're there. With a huff of frustration, Mum took her finger off the intercom button. A few minutes later, the MPV came to a gentle stop. The doors on both sides of the car, like before, slid open automatically. The sudden change in light made me blink rapidly. Dr. Ehrlich hopped out. I undid my seatbelt and hopped out too, feeling the uneven bump of gravel underneath my feet. Thank goodness for that, said Mum as she descended from the car with Dad's help. Here we are, safe and sound. Mum and Dad exchanged a glance. I knew what they were thinking. I was thinking it too. Dr. Ehrlich's constant cheery manner was now beginning to be a bit wearing. I took a good look around. Green field after green field rolled away from us in every direction. The only relief to the landscape came from darker green hedges that marked the perimeter of these fields. The fields reached out to the horizon. The only building in sight was the building directly behind us. I turned to give it a closer look. It was huge, like an old school building. 2 security guards who stood outside the entrance eyed our group. This way, said Dr. Ehrlich as she strode towards the entrance, beckoning us as she went. Mum and Dad led the way, followed by me. Entering the building, it was like entering another world. What had looked like an old school building on the outside was something from a science fiction film on the inside. The reception area was completely enclosed by glass walls. There was a number of solid wooden doors beyond the glass walls, but each door was protected and controlled by an electronic keypad. The reception area was bright and airy with plenty of plants, and each of them at least 1.5 meters high. 2 burly men in uniform sat at the reception desk, and they were all smiles when they caught sight of Dr. Ehrlich walking up. Hello, Janice. You make good time then, said one of the men. Well, you know me, said Dr. Ehrlich with a smile. I don't hang about. She turned to my parents. Oh, you guys will have to sign in, I'm afraid. You too, Cameron. Or should I call you Cam? I shrugged. Whatever, I don't mind. As we all signed our names in the visitor's book, the man who joked with Dr. Ehrlich smiled at my dad and said, Do you know the real reason why they black out the windows in the van? It's so you can't see Janice's terrible driving. Thanks a lot, Chris. Dr. Ehrlich smiled indignantly. But the smile in her eyes showed that she'd probably heard it before and didn't mind this kind of teasing. She walked over to the reception door, which led to the rest of the building, and placed a pass hanging from a chain around her neck against a black control pad with a flashing red light. The door clicked open immediately. This way then, this way, Dr. Ehrlich waved us through the door. Walking briskly around us, she led us then to another security door and down a long corridor with closed doors on either side of it. Dr. Bryce asked me to show you around the lab before we see Trudy and the others. He'll meet us at the pens. Dr. Ehrlich opened the door about halfway down the corridor. As we entered, it was a large square room with long benches and tables covered with test tubes, burners, centrifuges and PCs, and a lot of other equipment that was very scientific, but I didn't have the first clue of what they were used for. This is one of our labs, which deals with perfusion. What's that? I asked, hoping fervently that Dr. Ehrlich was going to use jargon that would whiz straight over my head. I didn't want to be blinded with science and words that I never heard before. I wanted it straight on this visit. In this context, perfusion is the process of passing blood through an organ or tissue, and in this case, it's a heart. I looked around with interest. What's that? Suspended in a tank attached to a number of tubes was a beating heart. I walked over to it immediately, of course. I'd seen pictures of healthy hearts beating. Healthy hearts were very red, and they beat with a strong, regular rhythm. This heart, though, was in trouble. It was almost black, and its beat was very erratic and irregular. That's a normal pig's heart being flushed with human blood. We're trying to simulate a transplant operation using the heart from a non-genetically treated pig. It's not going very well, is it? I said. No, but we do know why. As I said, this is an untreated normal pig's heart. It can't absorb any oxygen from the blood it is pumping. This heart will probably stop beating in about an hour or so. What we're doing is analysing the process at every second so we can compare it to the heart of a genetically altered pig, which is pumping human blood. It's an experiment for comparison, really, a control test. How long will the heart of a genetically altered pig beat under the same sort of circumstances? Mum asked. So far, the longest time has been about 8 months. That's not very long, is it? Mum said quietly. Dad looked at her and then glanced away. Ah, yes, but the heart we had in that experiment still hadn't been treated with our new anti-rejection therapy. We made a breakthrough several years ago. Dr. Bryce, you see, has discovered a complement blocker, which would... Oh, what? I interrupted. Sorry, my apologies. It's like this. The major problem with any transplant surgery is that the human body rejects the transplanted organ. There's one particular part of the immune system in a body that is responsible for attacking transplanted organs. It's a protein and it's known as a complement. Complement is produced by the liver, and what it does is destroy any alien cells it might find in the body by punching a hole right into them. Complement is like a kind of a battalion of soldiers, if you wish, who never sleep. They whiz around the body and search on a search and destroy mission. How does this complement stuff know which are the alien cells and which are the ones that aren't? That's a really good question, Cap. Well, your body prevents itself from being attacked by its own complement by placing molecular markers on the... At the blank look I was given, Dr. Ehrlich shook her head and said, once again, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself again, aren't I? Sorry, basically, your body has a way of placing special markers on its own cells to let the complement know that those cells aren't to be touched. They're from the body. It's like telling the complement that the cells are on its own side. What Dr. Bryce has done is find a way to add these same markers to the DNA of pigs that we keep. That's why Trudy is our best bet for the operation. Her heart is simply perfect. But it's not this a case of fools rushing in where angels fear to tread? Mum asked. I don't understand, Dr. Ehrlich frowned. Well, all this genetical engineering, I mean, you're scientists and you're sailing full steam ahead into areas you just don't know anything about. Mum, it's all right. It isn't Jurassic Park, you know, I said, just to lighten the mood a bit. It crackled from Mum, more than any other reason. I don't know why she's been quite so touchy today. But that's exactly my point, Mum. It is similar to Jurassic Park, isn't it? None of you doctors and scientists know exactly what you're letting yourself in for, or the rest of us. Mrs. Kelsey, I can assure you. But that's it. You can't, and neither can Dr. Bryce. He made that clear on the visit. There are no guarantees. Now, I've read somewhere that there have been cases of super mice. Mice that were injected with DNA of a rat and grew to abnormally large sizes. I looked at Mum in surprise. Where has she read that? But I also read that they'd been trying to breed super pigs, and the poor pigs ended up blind, diseased, or much too heavy for their own legs to support them. How do you know that what you're doing now won't have bigger repercussions further down the line? How can you be sure of what you're doing? How do you know that some defect in these pigs won't appear, say, 5, 6, 10, 50 years later on? And what about the possible diseases that these pigs may carry? There may be diseases that the pigs can take in their stride, and they aren't lethal to them, but are to humans. Now, I've read somewhere that a number of scientists now believe that AIDS originated in monkeys and somehow jumped across the species barrier into us humans. And what about BSE? We know about mad cow disease, and what about flu? I read a few years ago that a strain of flu appeared because it mutates in pigs and ducks, and then humans suffer the consequences. So how do I know that you won't be importing retrovirus into my son when you put that pig's heart in his body? I stared at Mum. This is the first time I'd heard any of this from her mouth. You're not the only one who looks things up on the internet, Mum said, as she saw my face. All I can say is that we're doing our best to make sure we can tackle, or at least aware of, every potential problem we could encounter, said Dr. Ehrlich. But as you said, you can't guarantee it. For the first time since I met Dr. Ehrlich, she now wasn't smiling. No, we can't. Mum nodded slowly. That's what I thought. But Dr. Bryce wouldn't be considering a xenograft if he didn't truly believe it stood every chance of success. What's a xenograph? I asked. Animal organs transplants are known as xenografts, she explained quickly. Mum had all her attention to this point, and she resented any second not spent arguing Dr. Bryce's case. This complement blocker you were talking about, Dad chipped in. Has it been tested? Do you know for sure that it actually works? Oh, yes, we certainly do. We tested on specially treated rabbits, and the results were very encouraging. So this complement blocker is your way of trying to make sure that the human body won't reject the foreign heart, said Dad. Yes, you're absolutely right, said Dr. Ehrlich, with smiles back again on her face. And let me tell you, it works. Come on, this way. At that point, she left the lab and marched briskly to a very end of the corridor that opened up into yet another security door. To my surprise, I saw this wasn't anything like a lab. It was a changing room with lockers and shower cubicles. Cam, if you and your dad could just strip off your clothes and have a shower, Dr. Ehrlich pointed to one of the of the changing rooms, and I'll show you to the women's changing rooms with me. I beg your pardon, said Dad indignantly. Oh, I'm not accusing you of having offensive body odour or anything like that, Dr. Ehrlich grinned. But all of us have to have a shower immediately before and immediately after we have contact with our pigs. You're joking. I couldn't believe my eyes. Or my ears. Dr. Ehrlich shook her head. Trudy and the others are very special pigs, and we can't take a risk of them catching something or becoming infected. You seriously expect me to shower just for some pigs? Mum was scandalised. And what did you mean? You can't risk them catching something or becoming infected. Surely we're more likely to catch something from them than the other way round. I'm sorry, but it's something we all have to do. You see, no one is allowed to see the pigs without showering and gowning up first, and that's it. This is ridiculous, Dad agreed with Mum. And I agreed with both of them, actually. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. I'm sure you understand, though. We have to keep those pigs in an environment so pure as possible anyway. You wouldn't want us to give Cameron an already contaminated heart now, would you? She smiled back at Mum that time. Besides, Trudy and the others level the fuss we kind of make of them. I think they think it's a bit of a great game. I frowned. Sounds like Trudy and the others seem to be getting treated a lot better than I do. Mum frowned. Cam, do you really want to go through all of this? I nodded. Yes, I do. Come on, we've come this far. We can't turn back now. Good. Dr. Ulrich's smile broadened. Once you've all showered, go through to the other door and put on one of the surgical outfits. They'll be hanging up in bags up on the wall. Make sure you put on the mask and gloves too. Everything. Mrs. Kelsey, your surgical outfit is already hanging up in the women's children's room over here. Come on, Mum, let's just get it over with, I spoke, before Mum could have another rant. The doctor led Mum out of the door. Mum marched behind her without saying another word. I didn't need to see the expression to know what she thought of the way we were being treated. With a sigh, I had a look around. The shower room looked like it was the cubicles of the swimming bars I used to go to. Okay, Cam, let's get going, said Dad. We each went into our own cubicles. I stripped off, hung my clothes up carefully with the 2 pegs in the cubicle. All of this to see some pigs. It was bizarre. With each step, with each passing moment, I was getting drawn into a different other world. This world of hopes and dreams, all tied around the strangest set of circumstances I could imagine. And a pig named Trudy. I left the cubicle and headed for the showers. From the sound of it, Dad had beaten me to it. Adjusting the temperature in my shower cubicle, I still couldn't believe what I was actually doing. Anyone would think that we were going to operate on the pigs, for goodness sake. All I wanted to do was look at them, well, at Trudy in particular. Still, the water felt warm and soothing against my skin. I closed my eyes, allowing the water to play over my face and body. Each drop beat a tiny tattoo against my skin. For once, I wasn't aware of my heart. The world was a kind of sensation of warm running water, and it was so peaceful. At that point, so good. I smiled, but my smile faded to sadness. For a brief, welcome moment, I'd forgotten why I was there in the first place. I stepped out of the shower and looked around for a towel. Hanging up next to each other, shower cubicles, was a towel. It was in a polythene bag. Shaking my head, I tore the bag open and dried my skin. Tying the damp towel around my waist, I headed out through the second door and stepped out into a room so bright it actually made me blink a few times. Fluorescent strips covered the ceiling and the walls. They were all antiseptic white, the paint. Dad was already getting dressed, and I saw the bag with my name written on it nearby. I opened the bag, put the green surgical trousers and top on, even a cap which covered my entire head, surgical masks and gloves. By the time I was finished, there was absolutely no part of my body exposed, apart from my eyes. What do we do now? Asked Dad through his mask. I shrugged. Then Dad pointed to a different door, the one we had used to enter. We walked out to find Dr. Ehrlich and Mum waiting in the corridor, in a part we'd not seen before. Both of them were gowned up, but I could see that Mum still hadn't cooled off. Ready? I swallowed hard and nodded. Dr. Ehrlich led her way down the corridor. We entered a small room. It was white apart from a phone on one wall and a really large red button next to it. At the opposite side of the room was something that looked like a metal door frame. A faint buzzing noise came from it, the same sort of noise you get from the fluorescent lights we'd been in the room just before. I could tell from the smell of pigs, though, that we were nearby. And in a strange way, the smell of pigs, well, it was reassuring. It smelt normal. Well, as normal as pig's manure could smell anyway. But at least they weren't dealing with super pigs, or pigs who didn't do what normal pigs did. I was glad it was more natural. Dr. Bright was already there. He was gowned up and waiting. Welcome! I could see from the twinkle in his eyes and the creases around them that he was smiling and happy to see us. This way. We each have to pass through this scanner over here. He pointed to the metal frame. Then Trudy's in the pen just beyond. Just a minute, Dr. Price, Mum began. Is that safe? I mean, is there no chance of any of us catching things from this pigs in there? You're more likely to pass your germs onto the pigs than the other way round, said Dr. Price, with just a hint of a sharp edge in his voice. Look, let me reassure you that the pigs in these pens are cleaned regularly. The pens themselves are properly ventilated. The temperature is regulated, and we do all we can to keep our pigs very, very clean. Yes, but is it safe? Mum persisted. Of course it's safe. You've had a shower and changed into sterile surgical gowns, so there's no danger to either yourself or the pigs. He led us away towards the scanner. And why do we have to be scanned? Mum protested. We've already showered. We've got dressed into these surgical gowns. Do you think we've got apple sauce tucked under my hat or something? No, it's just a precaution. We have to do it, said Dr. Price. It's just that we've been fooled before and we can't afford to take any chances. We've had someone try and smuggle a knife into the pens before now. What type of scanner is that? Mum's tone was now sharp and very edgy. It scans for metal objects. Using what? X-rays? That's right. But there's such a low dosage. X-rays? Mum was horrified. Yes, but a very low dosage, Dr. Price reassured Mum. I'm not going to go through that thing. I'm not. Even though I couldn't see Mum's face, I recognised the tone at once, and she meant business. Mrs. Kelsey, I can assure you, no, I'm not setting foot near that thing, Mum insisted. But you don't understand. Mum looked at Dad, and then looked at me and took a deep breath before turning back to the doctor. The thing is, Dr. Price, I'm pregnant, and I'm not taking another step until you turn that thing off and assure me there's nothing around here that can harm my baby. I stared at Mum. I couldn't believe it. In my head, I thought, Mum's going to have a baby. Why hadn't she said anything before now? Could she and Dad keep it a secret that long? I was going to have a brother or sister, though, so pure joy erupted in me like it was exploding from a volcano. I was going to have a brother or sister. A brother or sister. Dad, why didn't you tell me? I grinned. But Dad wasn't smiling. He was watching Mum. I didn't know, Cam. I'm just as surprised as you are, he replied quietly. Dad now had a look on his face that I'd never ever seen before. And all at once, the look was gone, and then her face was a mask again. His face looked calm, but it looked like it would crumble if he tried to smile or frown or even speak now. Congratulations, Dr. Ehrlich beamed at Mum. When is the baby due? Oh, it's in the new year, April, Mum replied. I noticed that she still hadn't looked over at Dad, and Dad still hadn't taken his eyes off her. Congratulations, Mrs. Kelsey, Dr. Price said. And let me reassure you, you are perfectly safe. I'm sure the scanner would do your baby no harm, but as these are exceptional circumstances, I'll have it switched off for you right now. Dr. Price walked over to the phone on the wall, picked it up, and immediately started talking to it. Within a matter of seconds, the scanner buzzed loudly, and then the buzzing stopped. Dr. Price smiled. Go ahead, Mrs. Kelsey. Mum walked through the scanner, but I could tell she still wasn't too happy about it. Dr. Price spoke into the phone again, and the scanner was reactivated. I told them that I'll let you know when we're ready to leave the pigs, so we'll turn the scanner back off again for you, he told Mum, and then he put the phone back down. Come on, we best get going, Mum said. I walked through the scanner with Dr. Price and Dad, who was 2 steps behind us, and dragging his feet somewhat. Mum, that's great news, I grinned as I grabbed her hand. Yes, it is, she smiled back. Beyond the room, there was a short corridor which bent around to the right. As we turned the corner, there were medium-sized pens lined against one wall. Each one was sectioned off from its neighbour with solid partitions, about a metre high. This is Greta, Dr. Price announced as we passed the first pig. She is Trudy's grandmother. When Greta became pregnant, we implanted some of her embryos with a human DNA. I stared at the pink pig who was totally ignoring us, her snout in the food trough that lined one side of the small sty. I would have stayed longer to watch her, but Dr. Price swept on quickly. Oh, and here she is, our star, Trudy. Trudy's one of the 4th generation pigs that have key human characteristics to some of their hormones. We truly believe that Trudy is as close as we've come to having a viable heart for transplantation into any human being. In my head, I started a little monologue. Well, Cameron, this is it. Keep your own heart, count every beat until it's your last, or have this heart transplant. Simple. I watched as the huge pig came whiffling up to us. Trudy looked me straight in the eye, and I looked straight back at her. She was going to die so that I could live. I told myself that pigs died every day to make bacon and pork pies and chops and sausages. This wasn't any different, except for the fact that I've seen this pig first. She was going to die so I could live. Was that a fair exchange? So why didn't I feel so guilty? Right, more than guilty, I felt horrible. Almost like a murderer. I told myself not to be so stupid, of course, but Trudy was just a pig. That's all I told myself. Trudy is just a pig. Just a pig. The word sounded like an excuse, though, in my head. Just a pig. People always use that kind of argument whenever people want to abuse animals, or even other people. Part of the excuse used to justify slavery was that black people were less than human, and the Nazis said the same thing about Jewish people all along. Like Mum said, it was such a convenient excuse for others to have. If other people and animals were different but equal, then you had to treat them with the same respect you wanted to be treated yourself. Different but less than was an entirely different proposition. To some people, animals were less than human in that way, in a kind of a way that tables and chairs are less than human. It all boiled down to what I believed, and the trouble was, I did believe that animals had rights, just the same as we humans do. So what was I doing here? Well, I had an answer to that one, of course. I was trying to save my own life. But what did that make me? Was I someone who was now the biggest hypocrite in the world, or was I someone who was desperate? But what about Trudy? What was her choice? If she hadn't been specifically bred to help me and others like me, she wouldn't have ended up probably as someone's Sunday roast or morning breakfast. If only there was some way that she could help me without paying for it with her life, I felt. Somehow, it just didn't seem fair. It didn't seem right to assume we could just treat her like this, just because she couldn't protest. Or at least not protest in a way us humans could understand. As I watched the pig, I began to wonder if seeing her might be a big mistake. I plucked up the courage and spoke. "Hello, Trudy," I said. "My name's Cameron." It felt so weird. I shook my head, wondering what on earth I was doing. What had I hoped to achieve by coming here? "What's she like, Dr. Bryce?" "Trudy?" "Yes," I nodded. "Oh, she's a fine pig. She used to boss all her brothers and sisters around until we separated them off. She's very independent and strong and extremely intelligent. She can be a bit stubborn." I smiled. "You mean pig-headed?" Dr. Bryce laughed. "Yes, exactly, pig-headed. But she's got a heart of gold." Heart of gold. "And if you did operate, when would that be?" I asked. "Just as soon as we could arrange it," Dr. Bryce replied immediately. "Do you still want to go ahead?" The silence in the room stretched on as everybody waited for my answer. I looked at Dad. He started the ball rolling, but from the look on his face now, he was just beginning to wonder what he'd let himself in for too. I looked at Mum and then reached my decision. "More than ever," I replied. It was simple. Now I had to live now. I had to live long enough to see my brother or sister. You see, Mum's pregnant, maybe even now, with more than one. Wouldn't it be terrific if she had twins, I thought. And with Trudy's help, I'd be able to help them and see my brother and sister, or brother or sister. I looked at Trudy. If I'd been alone, I would have hugged her and thanked her properly. She looked straight at me, and I hoped that she knew exactly what I was thinking, and I prayed that she didn't mind. I looked at Dad and turned back to Mum. Now Dad was looking everywhere but Mum, and I could feel the tension between the two of them. And slowly, the joyous feeling that swirled within me for that moment dissipated. It was replaced by something far less pleasant. My stomach churned and turned like a tumble dryer, and I actually felt sick. Seconds passed before I realised what was wrong. For the first time since Dr. Bryce had come into our lives, I was afraid. Not of the transplant operation, although that was scary enough, but I was afraid of what would happen afterwards. Once the operation was over, what would happen to my family? I couldn't help feeling that my family was disintegrating before my very eyes, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. Mrs. Davis will be reading chapter 7 next, and that is called Talking. Bye-bye.